And the mission and the vision for the firm is to help proliferate the spread of Bitcoin
Yeah.
to the business world. We all know about Bitcoin, what it does for individuals and the investment case and all that, but I think the next wave is businesses adopting Bitcoin, and I just want to help with that in whatever way we can. And that's right now taking the form of education and content and professional services like consultations and helping people understand this because it's not simple. It is simple, but you have to get, in my opinion, some professional help, or there's a good chance you might get lost along the way.
Keep 'em cold till I'm old. I don't plan to blow my load. Wallet so blue, if you know, you know. It's better than bonds, better than gold. Finna reap up what I sow. Fit money can't keep up, it gets sold. How many times you been told? DCA's the way to go. Higher highs, higher lows. Every year my network grows. Every day my network grows. Running relays, running nodes. Yeah, 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 yeah. Dollar a day's a minimum. Stats, zap sats. Any fear I get, flipping 'em.
So you are from Europe originally. Actually, let's introduce you before we get into all of the details. Daniel, thank you for being on Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions. Can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure, and it's been a long time coming. So,
Yeah.
I am from Denmark. I'm still here, for good or bad. I've spent the majority of my adult life traveling, kind of slow travel, living in other countries, and
Nice.
I am itching to get out on the road again, get away. I love seeing new things. I love meeting new people, and I kind of get a little stuck when I'm in the same place for too long, I think.
Yep, I relate to that. And you also founded Sovreign
Yes.
without the second E.
Yes, sovereign. Well, I realized I couldn't just call it the word sovereign because it's all over the place. Lots of people
Yeah.
use that, so I tried to change it because I really liked what it stood for. It's nice, memorable. And the mission and the vision for the firm is to help proliferate the spread of Bitcoin
Yeah.
to the business world. We all know about Bitcoin, what it does for individuals and the investment case and all that, but I think the next wave is businesses adopting Bitcoin, and I just want to help with that in whatever way we can. And that's right now taking the form of education and content and professional services like consultations and helping people understand this because it's not simple. It is simple, but you have to get, in my opinion, some professional help, or there's a good chance you might get lost along the way.
Yeah, it's true. Or it's very time consuming and it takes a number of years to
Yeah.
understand and stuff. And any business owner or entrepreneur knows that time is like the scarcest resource. So it's always good to have help along the way. So you're from Denmark. How did you learn English or why English and not like another sort of European language?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, in Denmark, we all learn English in school. It's mandatory. And I pretty much learned English playing video games as a kid.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's always
Real talk.
the Swedes, the Norwegians, the Danes, the Dutch, it's all the same playing Counter-Strike when you're a kid. I could speak English the same way I do now when I was 12 years old. It hasn't
Wow.
really changed that much. It's kind of funny.
And the reason I bring up English and the fact that you're based in Denmark in Europe is that Sovereign has consultants based all over the world. And I've had the pleasure of talking to Joe McGee, who's also your co-founder, and Ed Garon, who is from Long Island. And so I thought it was quite fascinating that you, based in Denmark, you've already, made affiliations with people in the US, and English is like the conductor, the language that links everything together.
It is actually very interesting, and I think kind of explaining that to somebody even just 10, 20 years ago, well, maybe
Hmm.
10 years ago, 2015 is not that strange, but that like a 27-year-old kid from Denmark is building a global company with people all over the world in the US. It's very strange actually. And it's funny that English is, I think there's Michael Saylor that actually explained it this way. It's the protocol for commerce and
Hmm.
any kind of intellectual or cultural phenomena in the world. And Bitcoin is kind of the same. It's that protocol value that is
Yeah.
now global instead of being compartmentalized. And I would never had the opportunity to do what I've done with Sovreign if it wasn't for Bitcoin holding us all together and English as well, I suppose. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's what you say is so true. Because I'm Anglophone, so I think I took language for, well, the English language for granted for quite some time.
Okay.
I live in Switzerland now. I studied French. I lived in France and stuff, and it's fascinating because when I have discussions about either geopolitics, economics, macroeconomics, Bitcoin, obviously, I notice a distinct difference between, generally speaking, people who are exposed to English language podcasts and media and books and stuff, and people who are just in sort of like the French language bubble. It plays a huge
Mm.
role.
It is interesting. I don't want to offend anybody, but I remember thinking how it was even possible to live in this world without speaking English because you're
Yeah.
basically cut off from. I mean, first of all, there's a whole other world existing right now in Asia that we're not aware of. They
Yep.
got their own people, their
Yep.
own movies, their own music, stars, and we have no idea about any of it basically. But besides that, if you don't speak English, you're basically cut off from the bandwidth where the
Hmm.
majority of the most interesting things in the world are happening. And so I would feel very limited. And I don't want to offend anybody by this. I understand
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
difficult to learn a second language, but if I didn't know English, I don't where would I be if I was just in Denmark in our little bubble? It's yeah, it's very interesting actually.
Which actually leads me to my, like, a real question for me.
Sure.
How did you discover Bitcoin? And was it through English language or did you discover it locally in Denmark?
Yes, it was. And Denmark is, I would argue, one of the countries that has the least Bitcoin adoption in the world.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
well, because our financial system works pretty well. It's like what's the American expression? It's the least dirty shirt. That was really awful. You know the expression I'm talking
Yeah,
about. The
it's
cleanest
the
dirt.
cleanest shirt in the dirty pile or something like that.
That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
that
yeah.
was awful. But the point is people here don't care about Bitcoin. They really don't. And so if I had to rely on Danish Bitcoin information or crypto information, I would have never made it. Back in 2016, 17, on the internet, I found Bitcoin, started studying it from people writing in English, mostly Americans, but also Germans. And I wasted all my time on not knowing the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. And that was the biggest mistake, you know? I think we all kind of, a lot of people have gone through that. I wish somebody would have sat me down and told me like the perspective of a Bitcoin maxi, because my life would have looked very different. I had to waste all those years and then come back when the price was 20, 30x what I had originally, but I didn't know what I had.
So, I think that I take for granted that people know the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. And with all of the meme coins, the Libra coin, Trump coin, Melania coin, this discussion about, other coins being added to the American Strategic Crypto
Oh,
Reserve,
yeah.
like I hear people commenting, people who are not necessarily part of like Bitcoin Twitter or people who don't post on Nostr. So I hear things and I realize just what you said, there's still a lot of people who don't know the difference. So
Yes.
what, like on your learning journey, why did you think that they were the same or what caused the confusion between Bitcoin and crypto?
Yeah.
Shout out to the Orange Manufacturing Group. They helped me with my logo design, and you know that I'll be ordering their premium hardwood sign and lightning keychain. Accessories are curated from a selection of durable traditional materials built to last. Use the Geyser Fund link in the show notes to take advantage of their trust minimal process. Or to save 5%, go to omg21btc.com. That's omg21btc.com and use code AAB21Q.
Very a great way you kind of articulate that question, because when I originally was looking YouTube videos, blog posts, and all that back in 2017, the overall narrative that I got was there's this crypto revolution. It's a way
Mm-hmm.
for you to get rich. It's outside the traditional monetary system. So I was only what 21 back then. It was
Yeah.
very appealing to us as young men. I was in college at the time.
Yep.
Oh, you can go because the funny thing is I wanted to buy Tesla stock back in 2016, but I couldn't because it was not I didn't have the technical capability to open a brokerage account with some firm. I probably didn't even have enough money for them to even
Yeah.
consider me, but oh, I could just make an account on this Coinbase and I can trade all these digital assets. And the idea was, well, there's Bitcoin, it's great, but we're all looking for the next Bitcoin. Like, what's
Mm-hmm.
gonna take what Bitcoin did, like the MySpace
Yeah.
comparison, and then take it to the next level? When I then came back in 2021, and I have to give credit, this was not my own genius. I had somebody that I really respected and looked up to that said, "Hey, take another look at this." And I fell down the Sailor series with
Mm-hmm.
Robert Breedlove and Michael Saylor.
Yeah.
And listening to those two just unbelievably intelligent and thoughtful and um, knowledgeable people talk about this in a new way, it completely changed the way I looked at it. And they were able to articulate why Bitcoin is not some project or company or idea, but it's the protocol and it's already won. And all these other copycats are just trying to compete, but the game is already over. And that completely changed my perspective, as well as Saifuddin Ammous at the end of the Bitcoin standard. He's like, does it need a blockchain? 99% of the time, it's a no. And that
Yeah.
really made me think, what all these crazy
Yeah.
applications of blockchain, it's either people that don't understand the
Yeah.
blockchain trilemma or whatever, or it's people trying to make money. I
Yeah.
refuse to believe anything else.
Yeah, that's so true. I remember back in the day, I think it was Wired or something, they had a whole series on explaining blockchain
Yes.
to a kid in elementary school and then like intermediate, advanced,
Mm,
PhD level. I think that was like 2017 or something, or maybe 2018 when I was starting to learn. And it's, it, the framing and the presentation totally legitimized the idea of blockchain.
yes,
And then there was this
definitely.
idea of like having solar panels on cars driving around and connecting that to the like it
Yeah.
legitimized this to me, who at the time didn't fully understand what was going on. And so it is so easy to get lost in all of the buzzwords and to get
Yes.
lost in, or the sort of conflation between investing in stocks and blockchain or this token because it's the
Yes.
same as a stock.
I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of the information we got back then was actually from Investopedia.com, if you know that.
Okay.
Um, and other publications like Business Insider and, like you say, Wired and all this. But these these people or these companies, they don't understand it. They don't truly get it. And it
Yeah.
was always focused on, wow, this blockchain technology, we can do secure voting, we can do this with
Yeah.
real estate liens and leases and all this. And it's kind of missing the forest for the trees in a way. And there's all these papers like or articles like blockchain, not Bitcoin. but it's just the complete opposite, right?
Yeah, definitely. So that's I'm happy you shared that as the founder of Sovereign to show to people like it is a journey and it does take time to understand. And so when did you then make the leap towards thinking about businesses and how Bitcoin can help businesses as opposed to just individuals?
Yeah, it's extremely important to understand just how difficult it is to find your way in
Hmm.
this industry or whatever. And that goes back to what I was saying before, that if a business owner at, let's say somebody's listening to this and they think, well, I want to get on board with Bitcoin. Well, the average person to truly get on the right side of this, they take like 5 years to understand this. Do you have 5 years? Now, you don't have to do that now because the information is such high caliber. I think you cut that down significantly. But even who has a year to dedicate to understand something and the
And
opportunity
run your business at the same time.
and
That's
run your business? And what about the opportunity cost? Okay, so
yep.
you I would tell somebody, don't do anything right now until you truly understand it, because you're gonna not know the difference between Celsius and BlockFi and River, for example.
Hmm.
And so you there's a 90% chance you're gonna fall in some pit or some trap if
Yeah.
you try to do it alone, unless you're some super genius, I guess. But for the majority of people, even to this day, if you now go Google a Bitcoin consultant or whatever, you're gonna get blockchain, Web3, crypto
Yeah.
consultants.
Yep.
And that was my idea for Sovreign. It's that there's a huge value proposition in offering strategic guidance in a structured manner for CFOs and business owners that want to take the fast track. They don't have the time to do it themselves. Perhaps they don't even have the proclivity. I mean,
Hmm.
how many people honestly want to spend 100 or 1,000 hours listening to podcasts and reading books and going on Bitcoin Twitter? It's just not realistic for everybody. And as a business owner, your time is your most valuable thing.
Yep.
Um, and I saw that obviously Bitcoin for retail for individuals, that already had 15 years of development. There's a lot of hype around Bitcoin for institutions and investors and financial advisors, but I don't know anything about that. That's not my area. I used to do B2B marketing, and so I always had a passion for business, B2B. I, even before coming to Bitcoin, I spent a lot of time studying money, business, investing, economics, that kind of stuff. So it felt natural to me to want to deliver this message to the world and try to put together a team, because
Yeah.
I am, full disclosure, I am not the consultant at Sovereign. If somebody want to talk to me, that's fine. But I've brought on a lot of people that are way smarter than me, that are highly specialized in different areas, so we can offer the best service. But we're a collective, all on the same mission of trying to bring this to the world of business.
Yeah, definitely. And so, from time to time, so I've really eased up on speaking to people who don't mention Bitcoin about Bitcoin.
Sure. Yeah.
I've really, really eased up because it can be a very sensitive topic, and it's not Bitcoin that's the sort of the thing that triggers people. It's about money and management and dealing with uncertainty and stuff. So I've eased up big time. But when, how do I say this? What would be like a common entry point for a business owner when it comes to understanding the value proposition of Bitcoin for them?
I want to always kind of keep it simple.
Yeah.
If somebody's coming in, we can start talking about the investment case and why it's so good and has a great Sharp ratio and it's liquid and all, but that's not what you need to understand. And for most people, unless you're talking to like a CFO or whatever,
Yeah.
that's not the story they want to
It's
hear.
like over their
They,
head. Yeah.
yeah, there's no point in that. You just have to understand that it's the same value proposition for everybody. And
Hmm.
I said that I was on Josh Friedman's show. I said exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's an individual, it's a company, a nation state, a nonprofit, an organization. The big idea, which
Yeah.
sounds silly, is just take out the bad money, the toxic soft money and put in hard money, sound money. And once you remove the poison and you put in the proper acid, everything gets better. Then we can take it from there and say, okay, what about all these different things? But you just have to understand Bitcoin is just better money. And who
Yeah.
wouldn't want better money? Whether it's a business or a person, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. And better money means that you're not going to lose your purchasing power,
Yes.
consistently. Better money. I mean, it's like all of these, inflation figures that are bandied about. Inflation is 2%, it's 3%.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, for my business, it's a lot higher because I
Yes.
need to access, these goods, for example, that have like, gone up 15 or 20%. Like, how does that help me?
Exactly. And I hope it's not too oversimplified because when you say like better money, it
Yeah.
obviously opens up this gigantic rabbit hole. Well, what does even better money mean? And then you have to explain what are the properties of money. And
Yeah.
then you explain that Bitcoin's monetary properties are just better. And that then leads to less inflation and all these different things. I was just reading this morning about Google Ads, how people were complaining that they've gotten so expensive. The cost per click Google Ads, if you know that, like it says, the sponsored.
Hmm.
If you search for
Yeah.
something, have a sponsored link, that has gone up between 40 and 50% since 2020. So
Wow.
yes, it's crazy. It's always gone up in price. It's the same with all kind of cost per click advertisement online, but that means you've had, let's just say 40%, a 40% inflation in your customer acquisition cost from that channel. So if you're spending the same amount of money as you did 5 years ago, well, you're seeing less results. You have to now increase your budget, and people are struggling to keep up with this. It's just one example of how your
Yeah.
life as a business owner keeps getting harder and harder,
Yep.
and it's of no fault on your own. Now, until Bitcoin is part of our economic system and a part of society, it's not going to solve the problem directly. But the idea is, can you do something that will offset
Yep.
um, that kind of retraction, that headwind or the leak in your boat or whatever? Put Bitcoin on your balance sheet, accept Bitcoin, and now you have an asset which your customer acquisition cost might have gone up 40%, but your treasury since 2020 went up, I don't know how many 100%.
Yep. Yep.
That's going to potentially offer you a buffer of now you're saying, well, I do have all these higher expenses and dealing with issues of shrinkflation, whatnot, but at least my balance sheet is solid, it's
Yep.
sound, and it's growing faster than inflation.
Yeah.
That's so enticing. I love just the idea of that. It's very appealing.
Oh, definitely. It buys you time. It
Yes,
helps to manage the uncertainty. Like, so we're talking
exactly.
about, inflation, price inflation, Google ads. Just was it yesterday or the day before, Trump announces tariffs, 25%
Mm,
on Canada, Mexico, and Europe. I mean, Canada, I heard about like last month or a month and a half ago, I suppose,
sure.
because I'm born and raised in Toronto in Canada. But I didn't
Interesting.
see, yeah, but I didn't see Europe, and I'm
Hmm.
thinking like, how do you navigate this level of uncertainty? Like the pestle analysis for any business right now must be all over the place with so many unknowns.
Yeah. No, it is crazy, and I love that you said it helps with the uncertainty. That's what really money is all about at the end of the day. It's
Yeah,
it's 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 helping with the uncertainty. But when you then earn money and you have to store it for the future because you cannot
yeah,
just spend it all, when you're then stockpiling that
yeah,
money, and it's like let's go back to that cultural age. You farm the land, you work the land, you yield some crops. You can't just eat it all the same day. You got to store some for winter. Well, what if there's rats in your storage, whatever mill or whatever they store crops in? I don't even know. Or there's a leak or it rots or whatever, you're screwed. And if you knew whatever corn I had stored was 7% of that was diminishing every year or every
yeah,
month or whatever, that would make you extremely uncomfortable and very short-sighted. And this is what Bitcoiners always talk about, the time preference. Because if you know, well, I have 5 years of coin stored up, your mind expands and you can
Yeah.
start thinking about all these projects and plans and feel comfortable with your family. But once you know you're on borrowed time and it's running out, completely changes your mindset and it fundamentally changes the psychology of humans. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we're seeing in the world today. It's people are not in the right mind space because the money has corrupted our consciousness. I know that sounds crazy to somebody maybe outside of our bubble, but I genuinely believe that.
It does. There are times when, because so I started to learn about Bitcoin in 2017. I heard about it for the first time in about 2016. And even to this day, I'll say something and I'll catch myself saying, okay, that probably sounds like some hippy dippy, like who's
Yeah.
going to take me seriously if I say this? And it's weird because it kind of causes this gap or this gulf between realities, if you will, like a
Mm,
fiat reality and I guess a sounder reality, which does not necessarily facilitate communication, I find.
yes, it's very difficult. I think I've spoken about this in the past too, that I don't think every person on the I can say with a lot of confidence that every person on the planet's not going to be a Bitcoin maxi. They're not going to care about all the things we're talking about. They're
Yeah.
not gonna grok all the things we talk about here, but they are gonna enjoy Bitcoin. Their children are gonna enjoy
Yeah.
Bitcoin. And it's very important to remember that people don't have to understand how Bitcoin works or the deeper
Yeah.
philosophy of it.
Yeah.
Just like I don't understand how we're communicating right now over
Yeah.
this. I could try to explain, oh, it's this protocol, whatever, but I'm using it, I'm enjoying it, but I don't have to understand it. I just
Yeah.
have to click the buttons, and I think it's going to be the same for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's what my previous guest had mentioned. What did he say? I don't know how my car works or something like that under the hood, but I know how to
Exactly.
drive it kind of thing. And that's
Perfect analogy.
yeah, that's well said. And I think that it's good to say that because it is intimidating for people, if you're only exposed to a bunch of know-it-alls who are very I'm not going to use the word toxic because I interpret toxicity slightly differently, but a
Okay.
bunch of know-it-alls who might yell at you if you got something wrong, it can be a bit intimidating.
How would you define toxic then in the kind of what we're talking about now? I'm kind of curious now.
So for me, it's about warning people. And
Okay.
so in my Bitcoin journey, I heard about it when I was at business school. Another colleague mentioned it, and then I didn't give it much thought. And then after that, my father was like, I've told this story so many times. If you've heard it now for the 100th time, I apologize, but I'll tell it again. My father was or is a bit of a gold bug.
Uh-huh.
And as a result of that, he watched the Kaiser report with Max Keiser and Stacey Herbert.
Okay.
And he told me, he was like, you really need to watch the Kaiser report because we would speak about some geopolitical shifts. My dad would talk about like countries buying gold and whatever. And so I started watching the Kaiser report and I watched it when it was like Bitcoin only. That's where I first learned about Bitcoin maximalism and stuff. And they would warn about other coins, Ethereum. So this was like 2017. This was after the block size wars. This was
Mm,
after, I think Max Keiser actually launched a coin, Max Coin, on air to show how easy it is to do.
that's hilarious.
Um, yeah. And so this came like after all of this stuff. And they were like, don't mess with poop coins, don't mess with shit coins. Like, they are, and because I have a business background, they talked about them being securities,
Yes.
passing the Howey test. Well, what is the Howey test, And so I understand that in this age, something that is from the beginning of the 20th century may not apply entirely to this
Mm,
context. But, you know, when you do have a centralized team that is putting in marketing efforts, that is, you know, pre-mining or selling or fundraising on the road, it kind of looks like a business, you know?
Yeah. And it's
And
definitely
so
not the same as Bitcoin. That's the most important point, I think.
exactly. And then people will say, well, Satoshi did a pre-mine, and it's like there was no one else. You know, I mean, Gavin and Dreesen,
That's the
after
point.
the fact, actually built faucets to give it away to people because this was like the first. There was
Yeah.
nothing else. And so for me, toxicity is really about establishing very firm boundaries
Mm,
when it comes to other coins, tokens, whatever you want to call it
yes,
within the
I
ecosystem,
love it.
and understanding what it is. You know, okay, so there are a lot of critiques that, you know, Bitcoin is not great for privacy, that, you know, again, Satoshi's pre-mine. There's so many critiques, and it's like, okay, well, nothing is perfect. That is for sure. There are critiques about Lightning as well. And your counter solution, what the solution you are proposing is not much better. So, you know, like if we want to be legit about this, let's go through what the trade-offs are on both sides. And most of the time, you know, it's not
Yeah.
worth it. And so for me, toxicity is a firm boundary.
I actually I think I agree 100% with you on that. There's a lot of things I could go into there, but I just want to agree with you that I wish people had been toxic with me. God, what is this, like 8 years ago now? I would have been a multimillionaire. I swear to God. I took all my money back then. I put it in. I had some in Bitcoin. If somebody just sat me down and just slapped me across the face, listen, Dan, you gotta understand this. All this stuff was a Neo and Solar Coin and all this. It's all gone now.
Solar coin? I haven't heard of
Yeah.
that one.
It was funny. I made a lot of money from that. It would literally multiple times a day, it would just shoot up, and I would just have buy and sell orders, and I would just
Yeah.
like literally just milk
Surf the
money
wave.
just from nothing. And this is
Wow.
what attracts these kind of people that love crypto. They love the easy gains. They love something for nothing,
Yeah.
and they even went so far to remove the word work from having anything to do with what, and they replaced it with stake.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
proof of
Yeah, yeah.
work.
The
Oh, I don't
consensus,
want to
yeah.
work. I just want to get something for nothing.
Steak.
Proof of stake. So the point is the toxicity is saying we're not talking about your favorite color. We're not talking about your favorite car brand. We're talking about your money, your life savings, your life energy. And we have to put the foot down and say, don't gamble it on these casino coins, shit coins, whatever you want to call. Focus on the most important a monetization happening right now, once in a species moment. Forget about all that other stuff. And I don't think Bitcoin maxis are toxic. I think people get mad that they get called out and they know they're right and then they cry about it. That's what I think.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to when I edit this, I'm going to look for the clip of Ed Giron,
Sure.
talking about and the way he says it too. He's like, "You think you're going to win? No, you're not. You're going to get wrecked just like everyone else." I'm going to
Yeah.
insert that clip.
Super important to tie that back to like the meme coin where we started. I think a lot of these people, they do this because they understand the money's dying, they feel it in their pocket. So when
Yeah.
the money's dying, that creates a gambling culture. I see it. I don't know how it is in Switzerland, but everywhere here in the United States, every sporting event, every MMA or mixed martial arts fight, there's all these ways to gamble. You're just gambling is thrown in your face, and people are really, they may not understand why, but they inherently feel that they're not getting ahead. So everyone's looking to hit that I guess that lottery number or that
Yeah.
parlay when in regards to like sports gambling. Everyone's looking for that moonshot. So bring that over to crypto. You have all these people. Oh, this girl's super famous. I'm gonna be the one who times it perfectly and gets out. No, you're not. You're gonna get wrecked just like everyone else. And that's what happens. People get lured in because their lifestyle's being devalued and they're looking for a way out. And then they arrive at some charlatan talking up a meme coin. They put in an insane amount of money that should not ever be put into these things, and then they lose it all.
Because he does talk a lot about the gambling culture and parlay, and because I asked him about the Haktua coin and what he thought about it, and But it's good, I think, to have consultants, to have people who have gone down that path, and
Yes.
because it's sincere, it's not like
Yes.
I've never been a gambler. I'm more risk averse. So when I
Sure.
say something, people are like, "Okay, Saidah, like whatever, you're missing. Oh,
Sure.
I know it all," kind of thing. But I think that if I'd had that experience, that I could say firsthand, I tried to do this and I got wrecked, I would be just a little bit more credible.
I guess so. I don't think it's diminishes your message at all, but I never actually thought about it that way. Every advisor we have at Sovereign has gone through the fire. It's not just we're not armchair philosophers.
Yeah.
It's people that have done the work and understood it and been burnt. And it's always this. How many times have you heard this story? I got into Bitcoin, got into crypto, traded it, wasted my time, wasted my money, eventually realized it was Bitcoin only, and now that's what I'm focusing on.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you never hear anybody say, well, I got into Bitcoin and then thought that was stupid and now I'm all into XRP. It's like I don't think I've ever heard that even once.
Yeah.
It's funny.
That is so true. That
Yeah.
is so true. We'll see. Some probably bot or dishonest person on Twitter will probably be like, "No, I'm XRP only. Like, forget
Yeah, there
Bitcoin."
are
But
some people. I don't want to talk bad about people. I'm sure people have their reasons. Um, yeah, Bitcoin, even this is how I say it. I'm going to finish it on this so you can move on to something else. Let's say the second best thing. What's the second best? The second best thing is going to have 0.000000001% of the impact that Bitcoin is going to have. And that we're not talking about the 99% of the rest, which is probably going to be useless. Whatever is going to be, oh, you have votes on blockchain or energy management system, whatever that is, its impact is going to be an ant compared to the empire state building of what Bitcoin is going to do.
yeah,
So if you don't understand that, your number one goal is to understand that. If you do understand it and you choose to devote your time elsewhere, I choose to dedicate my time to Bitcoin because I want to help move the world forward and it's worthwhile to me. And if I was just working on some other project to make myself rich, morally that doesn't sit very well with me. It's not that there's
yeah,
a problem with that, but I want to dedicate myself to what's most
yeah,
important. And Bitcoin can just literally save people's lives. It's such a force for good in the world.
yeah. It's true, and it is a tough path to follow. I know that I've mentioned Bitcoin to people many years ago, and I've had a few people come back to me saying, "Oh, I wish I had, learned about it or bought a little bit when you first talked about it because, like as life progresses, you start families and you want to do other things. Like you're not in the fun, like, 21-year-old, let's go out and party phase
Sure.
anymore.
Yeah.
You start to really feel the consequences of your choices. I know I sound like an old lady saying this. That is okay, but it is very true, especially when you settle
100%.
down and you have a family, you're like life is real. Life,
Yeah,
there's no one to bail me out. This is real stuff.
true. And I think Bitcoin is the best buffer for that. And what we kind of want to educate people on is that Bitcoin is not a huge risk. It's not a gigantic bet. It's actually the thing that has been stripped of all the risks, all the
Yeah.
management risk, the execution risk, the operational risk, the counterparty risk. Yes, there's the risk of a new protocol, a new form of money, but once you understand Bitcoin to a certain level, put it on your personal balance sheet, put it on your
Yeah.
company's balance sheet, go back to work. Don't pay attention to the all this other stuff going on, all these other cryptocurrencies. Focus on what you do best, and if you have a
Yeah.
long time horizon, you're gonna look at your account one day, and it's most certainly gonna be more than it was earlier in the past.
Yeah, definitely. So, Daniel, for any person who is interested, who runs a business and they're interested in learning more about it or just sort of lurking and observing to see,
Sure.
what this thing is all about, what resources can you recommend to them? Because I know that Sovereign has a newsletter that I do read when I get the chance
Oh,
to, and
great.
sometimes I reply. What resources can they look to?
I mean, to plug our own resource, they can go on our website. We have the ebook, we have the newsletters, whatever. What I would say is find somebody that's a Bitcoin maximalist and just start following whoever you resonate with.
Yeah.
It's actually difficult. How do you tell somebody to kind of go on Bitcoin Twitter or like to find somebody like that? I would start following a trustworthy Bitcoin only company or person.
Yeah.
Thea, River, past recommended Swan a lot. I think they still have a lot of really great content. Follow
Hmm.
people like you, and then you start falling down that rabbit hole. Read a book, listen to some podcasts, whatever. Of course, I can recommend a specific resource or something, but I would just say stay away from anybody that's not a Bitcoin maximalist, and
Yeah.
you'll keep following the right people. I
Yeah.
hope that kind of
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's like its own sort of network effect. And to illustrate what you're saying, so I used to watch the Kaiser Report. That is where I first saw Saifedean Ammous before he released the Bitcoin Standard with his
There
like
you
little
go.
curly afro. And then he released his books. I bought them. I saw Adam Back. I'd seen his name in the white paper, but I saw
Sure.
him interviewed on the Kaiser Report. I saw Nick Bhatia when he came out with Layered Money. I
Perfect.
saw like just so many people, and it's true. So I created a Twitter account when I started watching the Kaiser Report, and I was scared to death.
Oh, I can imagine.
Oh my gosh, what am I going to tweet? Hi. Who cares? And I always say like who cares what I have to say really? Like there's so
Yeah,
many
I
voices out
get it.
there. But I started to follow people, and it's exactly what you say. I started to follow people, and then they would refer to someone else. I think I saw Samson Mao on the Kaiser Report as well. And then slowly and surely it builds, and then you start to understand. The Block Size Wars, which is a book that I ended up buying to understand a bit more. It's all through that sort of like word of mouth and those connections that you build when you start to follow someone.
That was you explained exactly what I would hope happens to somebody. If you have the lens, you go on YouTube and you find like BitBoy or these
Yeah.
very distasteful people in my
Yeah.
opinion, and as soon
Yeah.
as they start talking about crypto, you turn it off and you go
Hmm.
until you find somebody that talks about Bitcoin. Then you hear about Save, you hear Samson Mao, you hear about Sailor, and then you just fall down that rabbit hole. That's what I would hope would happen.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And when you start to hear about crypto as well, ask where the money is coming from. Just like number one question, where is it coming from?
Yeah, it there's we could do a whole podcast just clowning on the crypto world. I think there's so many ways you can look at it. At the end of the day, Bitcoin already solved the problem. It's already winning. It's already great. Don't waste your time with it and listen to the 100,000 people that are begging you. Don't waste your time on it. Don't make the same mistakes that we did. I think
Yeah, yeah.
that's it.
So before we close out, question. So here in Switzerland, we've got the initiative to add Bitcoin to the constitution, which is not a strategic reserve. It is about having the population from the ground up vote on whether they want the Swiss National Bank to hold Bitcoin. It could be one Satoshi, it could be 10, it could be more, but it is a ground up initiative. In the US, of course, there's the discussion of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. El Salvador is El Salvador. I'm not sure what's happening right now, but they seem to continue buying Bitcoin. In Denmark, is there any such discussion at a local level or maybe wider on a European scale?
I'm the wrong person to ask about politics.
Okay.
But I can tell you in Denmark, nobody's interested in anything but slowing the spread of Bitcoin. I mean, just what was this,
Ah,
2 months ago? They raised the possibility of introducing unrealized capital gains tax on
well, that's
Bitcoin.
right.
Yes, as the only
That's
country in the
right.
world, and everybody was hitting me up like, Daniel, are you guys, did they drop acid in the water supply or like, hey, your people are embarrassing us? I'm like, sorry, I don't know what's going on. No, No, I don't think they will. I think you look at places like Scandinavia, like Sweden has the oldest central bank in the world. In
Oh,
general, Scandinavia has the soundest financial systems, I would say, the lowest inflation, similar to Switzerland as well. Your economy works very well,
hmm,
and that's highly correlated with a disinterest in alternative financial systems. You go talk to somebody in Africa or Southeast Asia or South America, they understand Bitcoin. Just
yeah,
tell an Argentinian, here's a form of
yep,
money with no inflation that the government can't confiscate and you can send it wherever you want. Okay, sign me up. But
yeah,
in
they
Denmark, I
get
can
it.
just, I have the Danish equivalent of Venmo or whatever. I just send the money. People feel very
Yeah.
comfortable here, so they're not looking for a solution. Kind of a long-winded answer, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good answer. And so there's no discussion at a nation state level. And that is so true.
No.
You know, I get so maybe this chapter of the podcast will be like Saidah talks about Max Keiser again. But I remember a few years ago, he said something along the lines of the first will be the last, and the last will be the first
Mm,
with respect to adoption. So, in like Switzerland, there are many people who we have Twint here, which is, I guess, like Venmo. It's very easy to send and receive Swiss francs in
sure.
Switzerland. Sending money abroad through the traditional banking system, like so from personal experience, Switzerland to
Yep.
Canada is expensive and it does
Yes.
take a long, like it takes a lot of time. But there is still comfort, you know. It's easy to exchange with euros. People travel, you know, to Italy and France and all over the place very seamlessly. And so there is less of an incentive for the average person to actually learn
100%.
about Bitcoin. Whereas, you know, I've had Marcel and Sabrina from Bitcoin Data based in Kenya here
Nice.
on the podcast,
Yeah.
and they talk about the reality basically. And so they are so far down the Bitcoin rabbit hole of the ethos from a technical perspective. They are so advanced because of
Mm,
necessity that I
yeah.
can see, you know, how the first can become the last because we're so comfortable, and the last, who are they're not comfortable whatsoever, become the first in a few years because they've had to learn the hard way. Or Machinkura, even based in South Africa. Yeah,
It's brilliant. They don't have to spend 2 hours on a podcast explaining the value proposition. It's very
exactly.
clear to these people, and
Yep.
I kind of want to make a comment to that I think as we're discussing Bitcoin and digital assets in the West,
Hmm.
it's sometimes a little bit egocentric to talk like we are the whole world because
Oh yeah.
we're not. I mean, all of Europe and the US and Canada and Australia, whatever, these countries combined, it's not even half the world. It's not even close to half the world. And so we cannot sit here and say, well, we don't need Bitcoin because inflation isn't that high, or well, I can send money here and there and blah blah blah. Not only is that not the case for the majority of the world, but we are getting subsidized by the majority of the poor people in the world. We are extracting their resources. There's more money flowing from poor countries to rich countries than vice
Yep.
versa at this
Yep.
point in time.
Yep.
And we're exporting the inflation. Um, I mean, what France, the way they're controlling the currencies in Africa, all that, it's evil and distasteful to an incredible degree. And so I think it's important when um, people talk about Bitcoin and this, that they understand that we're not just trying to make some dude in Denmark or Switzerland rich. We're trying to actively save people. We're trying to help the world. And the people that
Yeah.
need it the most, their voices aren't always heard.
Yeah.
But I'm very hopeful because also when you talk about the last being first, poor countries are often very energy rich. They're often
Yeah.
in very warm countries with a lot of sunshine.
Yeah.
Getting them plugged into the Bitcoin network, getting them set up with miners like Gridless and all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff, I think the future could look very, very different. And I'm super hopeful that third world countries can kind of bootstrap themselves with Bitcoin and kind of leap into the digital age in a way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm gonna look for a book. Hold on, it should be behind me somewhere because
Interesting.
we didn't. So I sent you like just ideas for our discussion today, but I
Sure.
didn't mention the French CFA. And it's the second time that it's come up this week randomly. So I'm taking it as a sign. So I'm gonna look for the book that I
Awesome. I'm very
recommend.
intrigued.
Yeah, I hope I have it here. Maybe I don't. Here we go.
I love your Bitcoin can't be racist. That's great.
Oh yeah. Oh, so quick story. This was like a huge aha moment for me because I used to do, I may
Interesting.
get slaughtered for this, but it's on my website, so I don't care and I'm fully transparent. But I used to do consulting in diversity, equity, and inclusion because for a moment I did think that it was worth examining our biases, not from the perspective of, you know, I don't want to say anything to offend anyone, but not from the perspective of we are all equal.
Mm,
I.e., so very basic example, I started taking judo lessons last year. In my judo class, there are men who are bigger and stronger than me. I like it's not the case where I'm going to be like, well, I should be as strong as you. Like, you see what I mean?
yeah,
Like, it's
100%.
more from the perspective of access and financial inclusion from that
Perfect.
perspective. And in my journey of understanding what permissionless means, I set up a node. I transacted with people on the African continent, on different continents, just to
Interesting.
play with it and
Yeah.
understand why, like, what's so special about Bitcoin. And then the permissionless nature of Bitcoin clicked in, and I was like, oh, that's right. There is no centralized entity running this network. So, no one is going to say, okay, Saidah, you're a Black woman or you're a woman of African descent or however you want to classify me. Therefore, I'm going to cut off your bank account. That cannot happen with Bitcoin. And so when I
That is
ordered, I
correct.
think I got this from Fulmo because I ordered a Raspberry Pi from them.
Okay.
It came with this sticker that said Bitcoin can't be racist, and I was like, I get it. And so, like, I have it just as a memory. But this is the book that I highly recommend people take a look at. It's called Africa's Last Colonial Currency: The CFA Franc Story, and it describes how France basically uses the currency in order to keep countries that use the CFA, like Senegal, for example, enslaved, if you will. So
Yeah.
it could
I
be,
think enslaved is the right word to use. We
yeah,
shouldn't apologize because we
yeah,
have to call it what it is. I love that
yeah.
you're honest about that.
Yeah, so it could be, if they want to sell a resource to China, it has to go through France for the approval. I think France has like first refusal rights or something like that.
Uh,
And then it's the CFA is converted into like euros, then it's converted into the renminbi, and then back to euros. And, like Europe basically decides what they want to keep, how they want things to go. And so, with this system in place, it's very difficult for a country to actually, become sovereign and to live off of trade because you've got a third party interfering. So,
it's disgusting, and I'm really happy that you bring it up because I I don't actually. This is funny. I listen to a lot of Bitcoin podcasts, but it's very rare that people discuss this exact scenario. I look at it as a form of monetary enslavement,
yeah,
and of course they say, well, we're helping them out, we're doing this and that, but at the end of the day, it's all about control. And I think the people involved, they know very well what they're doing, at least the people at the top.
yeah,
You're controlling the flow of money, you're extracting wealth, you're skimming off the top. It is, and going back to what you were saying, I actually often take it for granted the permissionless of Bitcoin because I feel like as a Danish citizen, I might have a certain inborn, just being completely honest, like arrogance or entitlement that I feel if, and I know people my generation, like if I want to send money somewhere, I should be able to do it.
Yeah.
Like that seems like a basic human right to
Yep.
me.
Yep.
Like I never before Bitcoin, I never questioned like if I want to send money to Africa, like I should just be able to do that, and it should honestly be simple. Obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about at that point, but with the way the monetary system is set up right now, it's not going to evolve to a place where everything works. It is never it's I think it's incapable of that. And even if it was, at the end of the day, it would be at the behest of people deciding it. Well, we don't like your central bank. Well, we want to
Yeah.
impose these fees. We want to have these tariffs. We want to have these restrictions. So at the end of the day, as long as humans are in control, humans are flawed, and
Yeah.
therefore the system will be flawed. That's just
Yep.
basic logic. With Bitcoin, it is an already established global permissionless monetary system where the rules have been set in stone and no humans can corrupt it.
Yep.
People say this all the time, but when you really think about it, it's actually really profound.
It is. It is definitely rules without rulers.
Yes.
It sounds like, sometimes again, like I hear it, I say the same thing, and it's like, oh, are you anti-human? Like it kind of sounds like, you
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
but it is not being anti-human. I think it's just acknowledging. It's the humility to acknowledge that we are
Yes.
all,
All one
when as soon as we get just even a little bit of power, we change. It's just the humility to acknowledge that we are deeply flawed, and if money can be a protocol that, you choose to participate in, it is not so easy to change the rules, then a lot of our issues can just go away and we can deal
Yes.
with, the real stuff.
Yeah, I love the way you explained that. We as humans, we want fair rules, and I think it takes a lot of humility to accept. I accept that I am not the person that should control things. It's the
Yeah.
same thing within the company. We try to have a flat structure. I'm not sitting there as the dictator. "Oh, I know the best for everything." But when you have people like Christine Lagarde saying, "Well, we can't have Bitcoin because that's going to take away our power to control the financial system," that takes an extremely arrogant and I want to say some bad words. I'm gonna refrain. I'm gonna be professional. It takes a very arrogant person to
Yeah.
think that they somehow should control things
Yeah.
and they know better than other people. It's like the aristocracy. Oh, we can't have the plebes control themselves. We have to govern as the learned, mature part of society. Get that stuff
Yeah.
out of here. Leave
Yeah.
that in the past. Let's set out clear rules for everybody to engage.
Yeah.
Let's remove the human corruption, because if you don't understand that humans are corruptible, then you're just ignorant. You just haven't
Yeah.
studied history. Let's get fair rules and rules without rulers. That's what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Daniel, it's been a pleasure. We're going to do 21 questions soon. Can you tell everyone where to find you, where to find Sovreign, and perhaps a link to a recent newsletter article or something?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, if people want to find me, I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn. I think my Twitter is like Daniel_1. And I would much rather have people, if they're interested in what we've talked about, to go on Sovreign and just check out. We just came out with like a 80+ page ebook that literally goes through everything we've talked about. Well, not everything we talked about, but the value proposition of what we talked about. We got a newsletter every week covering what people need to know about Bitcoin for business and treasury adoption and all that. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on. And yeah, I hope to do like follow-ups in the future, like the life of a business that adopts Bitcoin kind of thing, like the
Interesting.
customer journey or something. I don't know.
Yes. This was an absolute pleasure. I'd love to do it in the future as well. Love the show. So this was really fun. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. Well, stay tuned for 21 questions.
Keys, 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 keys. Yeah. Man like Quetch. Man like who? Yeah. Takes her Bitcoin off exchanges under self-custody. She runs her own node, providing liquidity. Yeah, she got her own keys. She got her own keys. She got her own keys. Yeah, she got her own keys. 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 Yeah, she got her own keys.